All right, let's talk about CSS, Cascading Style Sheets. If you've ever looked at a website and wondered how it goes from just a wall of text to something, well, beautiful and easy to use, CSS is your answer. Honestly, you can think of it as the fashion designer for the internet, and we're about to peek inside its workshop.
So have you ever really thought about this? When you open a web page with zero custom styling, how does a big headline know to be, well, big and bold? It's because your browser actually has its own default style rules. But here's the thing. What if you want your site to have its own personality and not look like every other basic page out there? That's the problem we need to solve.
Way back in the early days of the web, this was how you did it. You had to jam all your styling instructions, like colors, borders, and fonts, right into the HTML code for every single element. Can you imagine wanting to change your site's main color? You'd have to go hunt down and edit hundreds, maybe thousands of lines of code. It was a complete maintenance nightmare. It was messy, inefficient, and just not a smart way to build the web.
And that huge problem, well, it led to a really revolutionary idea.
And here it is. This was the big breakthrough, the aha moment. The idea is so simple but unbelievably powerful. Let's separate the what, the actual content of your page, from the how, the rules for how that content should look and feel.
And this is a great way to think about it. HTML is all about structure and meaning. It tells the browser, hey, this is a heading, or this part's a paragraph. Then CSS swoops in and handles all the visual stuff, making that heading blue or making this paragraph use a cool font. One handles the skeleton, the other handles the close.
This whole idea ties right into a core concept in programming called Don't Repeat Yourself, or DRY for short. With CSS, you can define a style just once in one place. For example, you can say all your main headings should be purple. Then, later on, if you decide your new brand color is green, you change it in that one spot and boom, your entire website updates instantly.
Okay, so we totally get the why behind CSS now. So let's roll up our sleeves and really get into the details of how this language actually works its magic on a web page.
So this right here, this is the fundamental building block of all of CSS. It's called a rule. It always starts with a selector, which is just how you target the thing on the page you want to style. Then you have these curly braces, and inside you have pairs of properties, like color or font size, and the values you want to give them. It's that simple.
And how do you actually select those elements? Well, you've got a few main ways. You can target every single tag of a certain type, like all the H1 headings. Or you can create a reusable class that you can sprinkle around and apply to lots of different elements. And for that one super specific, unique thing on a page, you can give it an ID and target it directly.
But CSS can get even cooler. It can be interactive. There are these special things called pseudo-classes that can apply styles based on what the user is doing. A super common one is hover, which lets you change how something looks the exact moment a user's mouse moves over it. It's a great way to create a dynamic feel.
And boom, here's what that looks like. That one simple .hover rule gives the user instant visual feedback. This is what makes websites feel alive and responsive, and it really helps guide the user and let them know the site is paying attention to them. Okay, so we know how to grab an element. Now let's dig into some of the most common properties and values we can use to actually change how they look. Let's talk color. CSS gives you a whole bunch of ways to paint your website. You can use simple, predefined names like red or blue for quick jobs. But for more precise control, you can specify the exact recipe of red, green, and blue using formats like hexadecimal or RGB.
Okay, this slide right here, this shows one of the most important ideas in all of CSS. It's called the box model. The core idea is that every single thing on a web page is treated like a rectangular box. Right in the middle is your content. Then you have padding, which is like the space inside the box. Then comes the border, and finally the margin, which is the space outside the box, pushing other elements away. And you can control every single one of these layers.
Now, when you're setting the size for these boxes and fonts, you have two main flavors of units. Absolute units, like pixels, are fixed. They don't change. But relative units are much more flexible. They can scale based on other things, like the user's preferred font size. And using these relative units is absolutely key for making modern websites that look great on any screen.
And here's how we put it all together. This little rule targets all the paragraphs on the page. Then it sets the border with a neat shorthand. It makes it 5 pixels wide, that's our absolute unit, it's a solid line, and it's red. See? One simple line of code that's easy to read but does so much.
So we can style little boxes. But how do we go from that to arranging the entire layout of a page? Let's check it out.
This is where things get really fun. The position property is basically a superpower. See, by default, elements just kind of stack up one after another, but this property lets you completely break out of that normal flow. You can nudge an element a little bit, or you can even fix it to the screen so it doesn't scroll away. It gives you so much control.
And for the modern web, we have even more powerful tools, like Flexbox and Grid. I mean, these were total game changers. They solved really tricky layout problems that used to require all sorts of complicated hacks. Flexbox is perfect for laying things out in one direction, like a row or a column. And Grid is for two-dimensional layouts, letting you create complex rows and columns, kind of like a magazine page.
And look at this. This is the magic we've been talking about, all in one picture. On the left, you've got a few simple CSS rules, and on the right, you see how they completely transform a plain HTML document into a clean, styled page with a nice heading, good spacing, and even a highlighted area.
So, at the end of the day, it's this ability to control position, alignment, and the flow of elements that really empowers web designers. It lets them build pretty much any layout they can dream up, all while keeping that critical separation between the content and how it's presented.
And that really brings us to the big takeaway here. This core idea of separating the what from the how, the substance from the style, is what makes CSS so incredibly effective. It makes our digital world easier to build, easier to maintain, and easier to redesign. So I'll just leave you with this question. Where else in your life or your work could applying that same simple principle make things way more efficient and a lot more elegant?